Okay, terrific. So you are student A. I'm just preserving anonymity this way because even though nobody's going to look at the YouTube video, what if someone did? So just setting a timer here because if the videos get too long, they don't upload easily on YouTube. Timer. So I'll give it 10 minutes. We're going to look at your introduction first. I'll begin by saying overall I'm really pleased with the work you're doing. You're already a pretty good writer. I mean, don't get cocky, kid, but you're good. I don't know if your mom played a lot of Mozart, were in the womb or something, or I have no idea, but you seem to get it. And I can tell you're working pretty hard. You seem to be making use of the recommendations I make in the project guide, which is great. So anyway, you gave your article a title. That's good. That tells me immediately if people are paying attention or not, because I don't make a big deal out of it except in the writing guide. And the thing though is you're not using the right file names. You haven't picked up yet on the fact that I have a constant file name that I'm using. Call yours always capital LS 450 underscore Ridley underscore and then what the assignment is. So if you send me back the whole project next time, it's going to be LS 450 underscore Ridley underscore main project 1 because it'll be your first full corrected draft where it's all together. Anyway, so you start off, you say our broken window based policy is the best way to reduce crime rates. It's in 14 point, which is good, but you didn't make it bold. These are the attention to detail things. You start, you say crime is a complex social problem that requires a multi-level solution. Now I don't know if all of my comments here are going to perfectly dovetail with what I wrote in my comments, but they should be pretty close. So I guess I left the first sentence alone, which is good. You say, however, efforts to combat crime. Go look at Garner. What Garner has to say about starting sentences with however. Generally don't. However, in a comma slows the reader down. Better to go with a but, a yet, a still, no comma. But efforts to combat crime often address only surface issues rather than the underlying causes. You say the broken windows hypothesis, you put it in quotes. Better form is to when you first introduce a word or a short term, like a two-word term like this, do it in italics. Also, capitalization should be consistent. You introduce it here as broken windows in quotes, both capitals. So I'm okay with the capitals as long as you're consistent. But if it's a phrase that's 4 words long or something, quotes are fine. But for a 2-word phrase or a single word that you're pointing out to the reader is special or being used in a special way, use italics there. Again, Garner. Everything will go back to Garner at this point. Hypothesis was originally before by James Q. Wilson and George Keeling in an Atlantic Monthly article that they co-authored in 1982. Well, there's a few problems there. First of all, Atlantic Monthly isn't the name of the magazine. It calls itself The Atlantic, with the, just like the New York Times calls itself The New York Times. Other papers don't use the definite article necessarily, but the New York Times does and the Atlantic does. How do I know that? I don't remember. I just know it. In any event, don't check me on that. No, you can check me on that. That's fine. I changed it around a little bit to make it flow a little bit better. I have the broken windows hypothesis was originally popularized in an article by James Q. Wilson and George Keeling that appeared in The Atlantic, 1982. Less clunky that way. Try reading it, go back and forth, figure out what I did, see if you want to keep doing that. The article advocated aggressive enforcement against minor crimes and disorderly acts such as loitering, public drinking, panhandling in order to establish social controls. So I say, changing it around a little bit, editing it. This is what an editor does. This is how people write things. They have editors. They reasoned that disorder in the absence of informal social controls produces an increase in crime. The article advocated aggressive enforcement against minor crimes and disorderly acts. That's my version of it. It parallels yours, such as loitering, public drinking, panhandling, social control. So I moved a sentence up in there that I don't think you had, or did you? Maybe you did. Okay, so maybe I just left that alone. Going back and forth can be a little bit tricky sometimes. Now, in the next sentence, I say, and I know this is my writing, although broken windows was conceived of to reduce crime. Here I'm using broken windows without italics. It's only the first time. You use quotes the second time. Just the first time is in italics is fine. After that, you can just use normal type. Was conceived of to reduce crime. It has had unintended consequences during the mid-90s in New York City. Okay, so this is my writing. So what did you put down? So you had this paper will review 3 related scholarly articles. So you used the scholarly article language there. I moved that down, and I took something I think you had lower down and moved it up. So now I'm saying, although broken windows was conceived of to reduce crimes, had unintended consequences. So I'm still introducing broken windows here. During the mid-90s in New York City, police stopped minorities far more than their Caucasian counterparts, and often these stops did not reach the standard for reasonable suspicion. You need a cite there. Now, calling it Caucasian counterparts, I don't know if that's your language or mine. Maybe you did that somewhere further down. Maybe I just tagged onto it. Yeah, you said Caucasian counterparts. It's probably not great. I let it go. That's a little inartful, though. I think it can be improved. And often, these stops, this is in my edited version. I actually don't like that. I'm going to change that right now. Those stops. This is a big thing with people's writing. The difference between these and those. Why do we have 2 different words? If we're going down the highway and we go by a guy who's got a flat tire, right? You know, right? But we see someone up ahead who's got a busted radiator. That guy we just passed and this guy up ahead of us, you see the difference? It's the same thing in writing, right? It's those things I just told you about, this thing I'm going to tell you about. So you had these stops. I say it's those stops. Those stops did not reach the standard for reasonable suspicion. You need a cite there. Race and economic status of neighborhood should be the neighborhood. I'm going to put that in here. So I made a little mistake my own there. Of the neighborhood were found to be the key predictors of how broken windows-based strategies were employed in communities the police were meant to improve. Meant to improve, trying to improve. You can probably find out the best language for that there. Erosion of trust between the communities and the police undermined the legitimacy of law enforcement. So that's really one of your main points of this article. Is a good place to end up the first paragraph. In your introduction, though, I've definitely changed around the sentence a little bit here. I think most of the sentences are sound. I just think it flows better this way. A problem I'm seeing students having, even good writers like yourself, you've got to have a plan. Even when you start a 1-page introduction, you've got to have a plan of what each of the paragraphs is supposed to do. You can't just bumble around in there. In any event, moving on. So now I've organized it so we're bringing in the language from the junior project guide. This project will review 3 related scholarly articles that address various aspects of broken window theory. So then you go through the 3 articles. First, Fagan and Davies report on the stop and frisk policing in New York City, or they report that stop and frisk policing has led to something, I don't know, increased racial profiling, profound effect, law enforcement. Next, Ludwig and Hardcourt provide evidence that there is no causal relationship between disorder and crime, but that disorder is just another form of crime. Lastly, Hinkle and Yang conclude social disorder is just a social construct and not actually a concrete phenomenon as once believed. The focus will then shift toward answering whether the results of broken windows policing are consistent with the original goals of the theory. So what do you have here? All right, so I see clearly where I took some sentences at the bottom of yours. Although broken windows appears to have was intended to reduce crime, I moved that up, I'm sure. Race and economic status, I think I removed that more or less as for various reasons. I'm not sure why I did that now, but I'm pretty sure I did remove it. What it is then shift. You have then shift toward, and notice it's toward D, not towards with an S. Towards with an S is sort of archaic now. So I'm almost out of time here. Let me just buzz through this so I can get on to the next session. Following that discussion and you had in the original, I will present my own. I wanted to provide some more detail here. Skip using the first person here. Not good for an article like this unless you're describing a methodology. The author, if you describe a methodology, I did this, this, and this in terms of process, that's where it's okay, but otherwise stay away from it. Yeah, and that's good. So that's the introduction. It pretty much comes in right on the money in terms of length, and I'm going to move on and do another video for your literature review.